So I read a small story about this in a newspaper, and I thought that's kind of interesting because all films about music kind of have the same storyline. They all begin with the artist being discovered, and then they show his rise and fall and rise again. And I thought, I wonder if there's a way to make a music film that does this differently, where the focus is not on the artist, but rather on the person behind the artist. You know, as filmmakers, as any kind of artist, there's a village of people behind you that is working really hard to try and help or for your success. And these are the unsung heroes of culture. And in this case, this woman, Vera Brandes, she did everything to make this concert a reality. And if there was no Vera Brandes, there would be no Köln Concert. So I thought, that's an interesting way of telling something new about music. It's a legendary concert. It's the best-selling solo jazz record of all times. So, you know, you go around anywhere and people hear you're doing a film about the Köln Concert and they're like, wow, I have this record. I grew up listening to this. My parents played it all the time. I still play it. Everyone seems to have some kind of connection. Somehow this piece of music really resonated with the world. But not many people knew about this story and how this concert was really very, very close to not happening. How until the very last note played, it was supposed to be a complete catastrophe. And how this woman, Vera Brandes, organized it and made it a reality. So that's all enough of a reason to make a film. It's about one of the most important women in German music history. The woman who made the Köln Concert, who promoted it, who made it happen. So what happened back then is that this promoter, Vera Brandes, booked the opera house. She was a teenager. She was kind of pretending she was older. She was booking jazz concerts, but she really went all in, booked this giant concert, and Keith Jarrett shows up, and the wrong piano is on stage, and he says, I'm not playing here, and walks away, because he doesn't play on rehearsal instruments. And Vera Brandes has put everything on the line, and she has to save this concert, and she has to make it work. And I mean, we know it ends with him playing, but she doesn't find a great piano. The concert ends up being played on a bad piano, and that's why I think it sounds so special. You know, when you make a film like this, the star of it, the lead role of Vera Brandes, which is played by Mala Emde, is the most important thing. And I was not looking for an actor, but for a collaborator, someone who would be my partner in this. And I told her from the get-go, Mala, this is your film. You lead us, just the same way Vera Brandes would lead people. So, you know, we follow you, you trust your instinct. And, you know, I still remember the first time Mala walked into a room that I was in, and I felt the air shift. And I felt like, okay, this is someone with a very, very, very special presence. And it was a joy to work with her, and I think she is incredible in this movie. She's a lion. It's really a role for a lioness. And she took it on and she just made it hers, you know? And there's not a lot of actors, especially not Mala's age, who can do this. So I feel like a very lucky director. She was everything. You know, when I read about it, I told myself the right way to tell the story is to find Vera Brandes. And, you know, we found her. She was on a beach in Greece, and I interviewed her for many, many, many hours. So I wrote down everything she said, and that's how I wrote the script. So this is her version of everything. But these incredible things that we show in the movie, they almost feel too good to be true, and they all really happen. That's her story, you know, the fact that her dad was a dentist, worked in the basement, the yelling from the patients would reverberate inside the house, that she had a different apartment, and that she started booking shows with Ronnie Scott, and that's in a relationship with the way her brother would drive them, and the way they would make those posters and hang them around Cologne. I mean, it's incredible, and it really happened. She came to set in a very difficult day where we were shooting with Ulrich Tukur, scenes with her father. And she was really moved to the point where she couldn't stay there. She went to Mala and said, "This is too hard for me because this is how it was for me." And she left. So, you know, we knew we were being accurate and we were doing the right thing. And then, of course, she came to celebrate the film when it was ready. The hardest type of roles is roles where you don't have a lot, and yet you still need to be around, right? It's very easy to talk, but for someone to just be there, and he's playing a very stoic character that just drives a lot, doesn't say much, protects the artist. They have a special bond, but Alexander is one of these actors that you really see him, he goes lost in a character. A lot of the times you don't recognize him at all. Like you see him, and I wasn't even sure that I was speaking with the same person when he came out of you know, hair and makeup, and he just, his body changes. It's almost like he's morphing himself into what he needs to be. And then his talent is so great that he can charge a scene just by being there. And that is really, really special. The hardest thing about acting is when you don't have to do anything. I just went to my favorite actors. I thought John would make an incredible job as Keith Jarrett because he's such an honest actor. You know, he's so, it's all about being real with him. And because Keith has he's so iconic that someone could have really made a mess with it, made it too big, too showy. And I knew John Magaro, he's so understated and so honest in his acting that he would do a great job, and I think he definitely does. And Michael Chernus, of course, is a national treasure. I mean, it's so funny and present, and I wanted someone that the viewers could be taken, you know, could take the viewers on a ride, and man, he's so good. You know, there's a scene in the movie where he leads us through the history of jazz by walking down a corridor, and it was shot in one take, and it's a lot of text, and he just comes in and he just, like, take after take, he kills it. It's just so impressive to see, and yeah, you can't help but not love him. The way I wrote this film was that I wanted to lose all control of rules. You know, there are a lot of rules that we employ in making films, in writing films, about the fourth wall, about documentary versus scenes, about merging between archival and real life. And I was, you know, I was locked into my room. It was COVID times, and I had just finished writing a very conventional, big American film. And I said to myself, this project doesn't want to be that. This project needs to be kind of improvised. It needs to feel as if it was written in one spurt without thinking, just like a jazz musician. So I wrote it without an outline, and every time I did a mistake, I tried to keep it. So the movie employs different devices. It starts, but then it has a false start, and it says, let's try this again from somewhere else, which is basically how a writer does it, right? When you write a film, usually you make a mistake, you say, nah, that's not a good way to start. Then you delete it and you write it. I kept the mistake because it's more like a piece of music. This is how this is how I tried to achieve a feeling of authenticity and spontaneity and improvisation. Yeah, it was a great experience. I think it really works. I think it's not a movie about jazz. It's a movie that is jazz, you know. It sounds like it was an incredible time. I mean, it was a time of political action, as we know, in Germany. You had, you know, the civil rights, anti-war, feminism, abortion rights for women, which Vera was very active in. And it was a cauldron of new music, you know, bands like Can and Neu and Kraftwerk, political bands like Flot de Cologne, and then this incredible jazz festival in Berlin, and you know, there was a great art scene in the neighboring Düsseldorf. Like, everything was happening. So it was a real pleasure to kind of dive into this time period. But also it was really important to me to stick with the way Vera experienced it. So there's probably 1,000 different colognes you can tell in a movie. This is Vera Brandes' cologne. I mean, for me, it was almost like the broken piano in the film. In a sense, I always ask people, what do you think? Would the Köln concert be good if he had not played it on a broken piano? And the answer is probably no. It would probably be just an unremarkable, another concert. It was special. It did resonate because the piano was broken. And for me as a filmmaker, this obstruction of not having Keith Jarrett's music is the thing that makes the movie special, because then you have to solve it in creative ways. And we need these obstructions to make art more interesting. And, you know, when we heard that, you know, Keith doesn't want to keep celebrating this concert, he doesn't want to be involved in a film about this concert, I really respect this decision of his. But he doesn't get to tell Vera Brandes that she doesn't get to tell her story. And that was really important for me. So this is her movie. It's very hard. You know, Cologne is a very dense city. You know, we scouted for a long time. I flew in from New York several times to do really long location scouts. We scouted in Cologne, on the outskirts of Cologne. We looked at theaters everywhere. And at the end, it's just a giant effort from the art department. You know, you show them a street and they say, wow, okay. And I say, yeah, this street. And they're like, this is going to be expensive. And I say, well, let's find a way. And everything is like jazz. You know, you have to improvise solutions. But at the end of the day, we found the right streets. We brought the right cars. We made the period sing. I think, you know, Jutta Freier, who designed this film, I think she did a beautiful job, because you feel the 70s, but you also don't feel this, you know, sometimes it's like Disneyland when people do 70s in film and TV, and I didn't want that. I wanted to feel real, not some kind of orange bath, you know, and I think we've achieved that. We shot the theater portion of the film in Łódź in Poland, and it was a working theater. And you know, we toured all the theaters in Germany and Eastern Europe. Theaters in Europe are so busy, which is really nice, right? That the theater is really alive, but it also means there is no way to shoot anywhere. And then they have a month in the summer where they're off, and then they rebuild the whole thing. So it was really hard to find a place. And we ended up finding it in Poland, in a theater that is active. So when they would rehearse the opera and we would shoot, and if you listen really, really carefully, you can sometimes hear very, very faint opera singing when the scenes of the theater are going on, especially in the office floor. And it's actually authentic. I just liked it so much that we didn't remove it. It felt real. I think it's a super universal story, right? So I think the world is filled with Vera Brandeses. And I think we are just showcasing what she did. And we're doing this it's about jazz, but really it's a punk rock story. She's a punk rock hero. The way she moves around the world, the way she gets things done, you know? She is a very current character, even though her story took place in the 70s. And I think people all over the world would be interested in hearing this story. And especially, of course, people who know the concert but have no idea the type of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it behind the scenes. I mean, it's built into the story. You don't need to do it. She was who she is. And I think she is fighting with a bunch of narcissistic men. And she even says it at the end. You know, like, this woman grew up in a very traditional household. Her father was a narcissist. He was very hard on her. The expectations from her was to be a kind of a straight-laced. She was always a rebel, and she did incredible things.